With the Indiana statewide transfer Gen Ed Core, and that's a 30-hour block of credits that has to transfer to any public institution in the state. And when a student does that, they can save between $3,000 and $10,000 depending on which public university they choose. So 30% of graduates walked away with that last year. That's huge. Also, really just the family atmosphere among the staff. Ms. Wooldridge has been a bedrock of support for this program, and we're so happy to see her in her new position because we know she'll continue to carry the torch for that program. And really the rest of her staff and her team on the early college, they've worked so hard, and each of them is so passionate. They each know their role, and they go above and beyond whatever needs to be done to make the program work.
And my name is Shannon Deedy. I'm the coordinator of school workforce initiatives at SEL, and I also work with Early College. I think one of the things we were the most impressed with was that these aren't the high flyers in high school that would have been earning dual credits anyway. They're targeting the at-risk, free and reduced lunch, first-generation students, and still wrapping their supports so strongly around them that they're lifting them up and they're graduating having already earned college credit as a high school student. So thank you so much for everything you've done for your students.
And we just, again, so much congratulations to you and ask that you please continue to support this really important program because it works wonders for students. So we'd like to present you with this banner that you can hang and enjoy.
Well, that's great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Doty and extended education.
Thank you, Mr. Mashmeyer. And before I start talking about enrichment, and then even prior to Sandra and Katie talking about their respective programs, just wanted to take a second just to for us to refresh our memories about where these concepts came from, because I think it's important to recognize the good work and the systemic continuous improvement is one of our guiding principles, and that's really how these concepts came about, is through the project that Mr. Mercer led, the General Fund Optimization Project, and all the good work of that committee. If you remember, it was through revenue generation, which is where these three fall under, but then the reduction and also reallocation. And there were three guiding principles that we as the committee felt strongly about, and that's at the core of that committee. And I think you'll see those threads come through each of these programs. And that was individual student growth, which is obvious, that's at our core. The other one is to attract and retain quality employees. And then the third one is marketability. And I think these three programs define all three of those very well. So just want to take that. Jeff, do you have anything to add as far as the committee? And I think you'll see the good work that Katie and Sandra are doing in those programs. For enrichment, I don't really have anything to present to you as far as revenue generation at this point. We're just getting started in that arena, and there's an aspiration school corporation that we would I can point you towards, and it's Zionsville Community Schools. If you'd like to go on their website and check them out. One of the things that we feel strongly about for the enrichment that our subcommittee is working on is that we want to offer classes in January, and one of the 5 categories that we through the survey that we sent out, you may have participated as an employee or as a parent. There were 5 categories of enrichment that we want to offer classes in to start the program off, and it is arts and crafts, music, athletics, sports type things, STEM, and Sandra, Anybody help me remember the other one? Was there there was STEM. I should have wrote my notes down and made a PowerPoint. STEM, arts and crafts, music, athletics, and foreign language. Sorry, I forgot foreign language. And so we're hopeful that we have all those in place come January. We already have a teacher wants to offer a Spanish class for foreign language. We have an arts and crafts already being offered right now, and we're hopeful that STEM comes along, and we're also working towards music to offer an orchestra. So we're working on those things. I'll be able to present more when we get everything more defined in January. So that's it on enrichment. So Sandra, you want to talk about Cub Care?
Well, we're really happy this year to be offering Custer Baker as one of our sites for the first time, not just 5 elementaries, but we added Custer Baker. And also we added a morning to everybody's schedule, and I think that's been very beneficial to some of our parents. During the day, our sessions include a study time to get homework in. They all get a snack. They have playtime and computer lab each day. We are also looking forward to our first extended care over fall break, and that site will be at Webb Elementary for those students who want to attend, the families who need that service during fall break. So we'll be in operation 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. during fall break, and have already some students scheduled for that. Today's attendance was 228 students at Cub Care. Jeff, you had some other numbers. Can you tell us those numbers today? You had.
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
We have 394 students enrolled in the program and about 60% attendance daily. The gross revenue that we're projecting off that program will exceed $250,000 this year.
So we had a few bugs right at the beginning. We've got those all ironed out, and we're all go.
I am just going to review where we are on Cub Academy. We are at 61 students, and the breakdown is right there with Creekside, Northwood, and Webb being our locations currently, with 3- and 4-year-olds, a few 5-year-olds, but very, very young 5-year-olds. That's actually, I've kind of sprinkled in some pictures so you can see how consistent each location looks. We're looking for some consistency across, just even with the room being one of them. That's actually at Creekside, and working with a small group of students. We ability group, we age group, we do all kinds of dynamics within the preschool setting. This is just a sample Cub Academy schedule. It's a very basic one, but it would cover all 3 locations. At each location, the daycare is from 6:30 to 8:30, and that is just daycare. The assistant can guide some play and put some assistant just items out and stations out, but it primarily is just the daycare part of it. And then it breaks it down to the morning half-day kids are from 8:30 to 11:30, and some of the kids stay on for lunch. The best part of the day to go check them out is nap time. And then centers and recess and story time followed by snack. We have 2 snacks that are paid for within their tuition. They do pay for lunch, and then it's followed and ended by daycare at the end of the day. We do have the half day right now sprinkled into each location with the full day kids. It's working well. There was, of course, some kinks getting that all ironed out and having those kids picked up at 11:30, but that's going smoothly now. I have a little friend from Webb right here. They did a unit on teddy bears and brown bear, what do you see? So that's her brown bear. Some other pictures captured all over. We don't go on field trips because our students, they would have to be buckled in on a special bus to be able to go places because they're 3- and 4-year-olds. So we bring the field trips to them once a month. Each location has, we've also made that consistent. So August was the firefighters all came to each location. They had their field trip at school. and you can see all the things going on. Of course, one of the favorites right here, nap time. They all have their own individual cot and they bring their blankets. And by chance at Northwood, all 20 kids fall asleep. But then at the other locations, they don't. But they lay quietly while the other ones do sleep. And just recently, I felt like it was going really well as a leader of the project. And I was, very pleased with everything that was going on and getting some of the kinks out. Of course, there has been kinks. You can plan for a year and still have kinks. But I decided to go ahead and do a quick survey to parents. Just last week, we were a month in, and overall, parents were either very pleased or pleased with the programming with 91%. And I had a few parents that thought that we needed some improvement with communication or online payment. That's one big thing. They really want that online payment. But those were the two requests if they thought we needed improvement, was the online payment and more communication. They wanted, one of the locations wasn't doing daily communication because with a 3-year-old, they don't come home and tell you everything they've done or if they've ate their lunch. So we did make those fine adjustments. You can see they made a car out of a box and matching 1-to-1. And so the next steps with Cub Academy, we're going to review the survey as a committee. Actually, one of my committee members are here. Jenny Deputy is one of the committee members. We have the progress report that will be shared with parents and parent-teacher conferences that we need to just review and finalize. Moving forward, looking at breaks, either coinciding with Cub Care or doing that as a preschool break package. And then summer, like a summer camp kind of opportunity, transitioning from preschool to a camp-like setting for June and July. We need to review and kind of start talking about. And then just the proposal, what it might look like for 2016-17. But overall, I think you can see in the snapshot of pictures, you're seeing individual student growth and the importance of play, dramatic play, and all the fine and gross motor skills along with the super kids and everyday math that'll make a perfect transition into kindergarten. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to answer any other questions. Yeah.
I might mention, while they're finishing up, kudos to all three of them. Sometimes we forget that in an educational setting, these folks have basically started 2 brand new businesses from scratch. They'll both exceed $250,000 this year, so it's a fairly robust process. And I want to highlight also Heather Richards, who is our assistant with our program, who's done an incredible amount of work, really good work in supporting Katie and Sandra and also now Bill. And so they're just off to a really good start. This also highlights the systemic continuous improvement that Bill alluded to earlier. Both of these move through pretty robust projects, complete with control plans. And so you're seeing Katie double back in surveying how we're doing and those kinds of things. They've just done a splendid job getting us off to a really solid start. So thanks to all of them.
Yes, Heather Richards. I can't say enough about her. She's kept me afloat. Great. And this is one of our volunteers.
There's no information on the grades, right? So.
All right, that brings us to Dr. Clendenning and the Department of Education.
Yes, the saga of letter grades continues. Right now, we do not have ISTEP scores back nor the cut scores created, so we cannot get letter grades. They are meeting Wednesday to determine how they're going to proceed. There are a couple options on the table. One would be hold harmless, and that would be that the school system and schools would receive the best score of either last year or this year for the students, because you recall the ISTEP test did change. Mrs. Rich did report in Richmond to the Economic Development Club that she is expecting a substantial decline, which would echo what Mrs. Now has been sharing us, because of the new test, not because our kids are getting less than education. It's just a new structure that's happened throughout the nation. So that's one option. The other option is just letting you choose the letter, 2 grades, and then also, or just everybody going back 1 year, and that's the grade you're going to get. So that's what's going to be voted on Wednesday. So I wanted to keep everybody abreast of that. And also that comes back into performance pay for our teachers. By law, we need to distribute that before the end of the year. So we're going to hope and see that if that happens, but if it doesn't, I know that we'll be coming back to talk about what that looks like for everyone. And the new contract that we just approved is tied to letter grades. And unfortunately, then, even though we did receive a 2% raise plus $300, the teachers will not be able to have that until we get the letter grade issue resolved. And once that takes place, we will go back and get retro pay and everything to make everything balance. So I want to make everyone aware of what's going on with the Department of Education letter grades and performance pay.
All right, good. Thank you. Legal updates. Mr. Young.
Yes, sir. Thank you. In last year's legislative session, there were a number of changes to legislation affecting school corporations. One of those changes, which has been signed into law by the governor and became effective July 1st of this year, is to no longer require bus drivers to be separately contracted with school corporations. In the past, for reasons quite frankly unknown to me, the law required that a separate specific contract be entered into with each bus driver. So we did that. In the last session, the legislature deleted that requirement and essentially now classifies bus drivers as school employees as part of the classified school employee base. The requirement for separate contracts is no longer in existence. And so it would be my recommendation that the school board consider at some point in time availing itself of the change in the law and going forward employ their bus drivers in a manner that is now consistent with what the legal requirements are, which is to simply employ them as at-will employees as classified staff. And I would recommend that the board consider moving in that direction at the appropriate time.
But we're fine with our contracts for the 15-16 year.
Well, there is nothing in the law that prohibits that. So I suppose the answer to the question would be yes.
I hope so.
You're fine. But again, it's not contemplated. At this time, it is not contemplated by statute that there would be a separate contract with bus drivers.
But we currently do have separate contracts.
Sure.
Is there any risk of staying the way it is now?
Probably not. And the reason I'm hesitant is, I think the answer is no, there isn't. But, a lawyer is always kind of hesitant to advise his client to do something unless he can find some specific statutory authority to authorize that action. As I said, the specific statutory authority is now in place to look at bus drivers as regular classified staff. So I know that there would never be a problem if that were to occur, if you were to do that. To do something different, it's probably okay under the General Schools Powers Act. The governing body does have the authority to enter into contracts with whomever they choose. So continuing on with separate written contracts would probably certainly not be illegal. It's just no longer required.
Well, let me ask the same question then backward. If in January 1st we wanted to do away with those contracts and go to the new system, we really can't since we have full year contracts.
I don't think you can until, the contracts that are here now will remain in place until such time as they expire. The question is, at that time, would you recontract with the drivers or simply show them as classified employees? Keeping in mind that regardless of how you proceed in that, the drivers will still get that assurance of continued employment letter.
It comes like in the summer?
Yes. And that, of course, is to assure them of continued employment so that they will not be seeking unemployment during that period of time that they're off.
So you're just recommending when we come back to the summer and it's time to do a new contract that we pull them in under our general umbrella?
Sure, and make sure the drivers understand that the change is one in form only, not a change in policy, not a change in working conditions. It's just how they are shown as employees of the school corporation. Classified staff
So it sounds like-
versus separately contracted employees.
It sounds like we got a little bit of time, but it's probably important that we communicate this properly to the affected.
Oh, absolutely, so that there's no misunderstanding on the part of the bus drivers that there's going to be some material change in their working conditions, their pay, their benefits, or anything else. This should not affect any of that.
Well, how would that, like if we would hire new bus drivers during the school year, would they go on the contract or would we hire them just as
No,
employees
well,
at that time?
They would not have to because the law was effective July 1st of this year.
Okay.
So new hires could
Good one
simply
for
be
this year.
brought in as classified staff.
Mr. Young and I discussed this summer, and really the time frame was way too short to get a good communication plan and not alarm everybody. And that's why we're bringing in September to say the law did change. And we have good communication opportunities with everyone to see what's best for our district. And so that we're not changing anything this year. But next summer, I think there is a chance that we'll treat everybody equal in that. But I want everyone to have conversation, and I want the bus drivers to feel like one more change and then them not be aware of it and not have a chance to engage us in conversations.
Do we normally do that in May before the school year's out, or do we actually do it in the summer? When we meet, when do we do contracts with bus drivers now?
It would be August.
August? Okay.
The letter of assurance would be delivered before the end of school. That is the time frame that we have used for non-certified. So that's what we would probably be looking at if we do opt to move in the statute.
All right, then as a board, we take action on this when?
Really, there'd be no action. Is that correct? We would just move forward
Correct.
with the
I do
law.
not believe any board action is required. Now, we may need to look at your policies and procedures.
Correct.
So the only board action that might be required is a change in your policy or administrative guidelines
Okay.
relating to bus drivers. But if those don't change, no further board action would be required.
Good. All right, that brings us to enrollment, Mr. Mercer.
Friday of this week is count day. This will be the first of 2 counts, as you're aware. Currently, as of this morning, our student count is 5,088. There's actually 2 separate numbers that are important to track. Our enrollment at count day last year, same time, was 5,099. So we're actually down 11 students from last year. However, as you all know, in May, I am required to offer an estimate of what we think we will be relative to enrollment. I estimated 5,054. We didn't want to have to give money back if we could avoid that, so I estimate conservatively. So as we sit today, we're actually up 34 students based on the budget that was built, which means that we will, if we're still 5088 on Friday, we'll receive funding for an additional 34 students when they make that adjustment latter part of the fall into the winter. And so that's kind of where we're at. We'd love to be up a little bit more, but at least we're very close to where we were last year. Over the last 4 or 5 years, our enrollment's been very stable this way, not growing to any large extent, but certainly not losing, and that's good news.
Okay, thank you. All right, action items. Okay, I guess we're ready for the public hearing on the budget. Is that first, Mr. Mercer?
Yes, it is.
All right, so at this time, I'd like to open us up to a public hearing on the 2016 budget. You then present that, and then we take any comments? Is that how it goes?
Yes.
All right, then please proceed.
Well, as you'll recall, last month I was here and we did a budget workshop, which I outlined all of the funds. There was attached, and there is attached to this board meeting, the notice to taxpayers, which is our budget form number 3, which outlines all of our advertised funds and what we anticipate being able to do. And so with that, today, we host our public hearing, which Mr. Mashmeyer will open momentarily for any public comment. And if there is none, then we'll move on to the actual approval of bus replacement and capital projects this evening.
All right, well then let's open the meeting on the budget. Are there any public comments on this open budget meeting? All right, well, hearing none, then I now close the public meeting on the budget. And then that brings us back to the next item on our agenda.
You have in your packet a resolution to approve our bus replacement plan in the amount of $581,301. I would ask approval from the board to adopt the bus replacement plan for 2016.
Move for approval.
All right, it's been moved for approval. Any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
In concert with the bus replacement plan, we also have a resolution to adopt the 2016 Capital Projects Fund Plan in the amount of $4,357,554, and I would ask your permission to approve that as well.
All right, it's been moved for approval. Any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
School safety specialists at Dr. Clendon.
Thank you. Indiana code requires that each school system in the state appoint a school safety specialist or many others that would fall in that same category. We have chosen a path of having one specialist at each building as well as at district level. And so by Indiana code, we need the governing board to accept my recommendation of the chosen individuals. In the board packet, you'll see the names of each person. They have to go through training both in the initial year and then every subsequent year they go back for refresher. Mr. Doty serves as the lead specialist for our corporation. So we're just following in compliance with Indiana Code 5-2-10.1-9, adhering to this governing body, the approval of my recommendation.
Move for approval.
All right, it's been moved for approval. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Coogee Exchange.
Thank you. This is a very exciting opportunity for our students. Last month, I presented that we are looking at taking between 6 and 10 kids to Coogee, Japan. We are pleased to announce that we're taking 10 students to Coogee. We have funding enough that secured all those spots. We have 6 high school students and 4 middle school students. We had a total of 31 students apply. There was a committee that met and they used a rubric focused on academic achievement, extracurricular activities and opportunities, as well as foreign language. If a student did take Japanese, they received more points in that category for their foreign language. If their family hosted a Coogee student back here over the last several years, we've had that opportunity as well. Member associated with Rotary, because if you recall, Rotary is funding a majority of this initial bill. And so on the list, you'll see the names of the students selected. We're also, the corporation's contribution is making sure that our chaperones have their trip paid for, and that is Kat Sarles and Gwen Craig from the high school. And then Mr. Moore is trying to secure one other thing, and Greg would be the third chaperone going. So we're looking forward to it. The date, they're leaving the Thursday before fall break. They'll be back the Saturday of fall break. They do have one long layover in Toronto, but in order to get the ticket price down to $1,500 for travel, that's how they had to do it. So I ask that you approve the recommendation of the students traveling to Coogee, Japan for the trip for fall break.
Move approval.
All right, it's been moved for approval. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All policies.
A plethora of policies to review today. And as such, we look at the discussion of many of these. I'm not going to to go through each of them. But just to highlight a couple that I think are important. One, policy 2461 looks at recording of meetings and what the appropriate steps this adheres to the new Indiana state law. And the biggest thing there is if we had a parent that we wanted to record an IEP or a case conference, they must notify the principal, and then the principal in turn, we would also record that same meeting, just so everybody's on the same page. We had to go through and designate C9 as our career and technical education program. Again, funding has shifted from the federal level to the Perkins, et cetera, and that was required. Policy 8390 looks at service animals on our property and what was designated as a service animal and the appropriate steps to bring an animal on site. So these will be up for a final board approval next month. And at that time, we can go through any other discussion items from policies number bylaw 0100 through policy 9700.01.
And we didn't make any changes in this sponsorship naming rights. That's just an overview policy.
That is correct.
And then our specific policy on naming rights and all that still stays the way it is.
That is correct.
And then we had some other policies that we still have to work through. This was a tougher bunch than normal.
There's actually one dealing with gifts and gratuities that we're looking at and getting definition from ISBA to look at that. And that's with regard to when Google comes and they sponsor us, what's acceptable. Like last time, remember, we received for every 80 free registration to the event. Well, that was a ticket of about $400. What was it? About between $300 and $400. Well, would that exceed the gifts and gratuity of our policy? And if that's the case, what are we supposed to do? So we're trying to get interpretation before we come back with that policy, but it will be on for discussion, I would assume, in October.
All right, any questions about any of those policies? All right, hearing none, that brings us to painting the high school parking spaces.
In July, a group of students came and met with me, and we were trying to come up with ideas of how to increase school spirit, and the students came up with several ideas, and this is one of the ideas that the students came up with. This project has been totally student-driven, and they have really done their homework, and so they are going to present to you painting the parking lot.
Hi, I'm Maggie Davenport. I'm president of Dance Marathon this year.
I'm Corey Myers. I'm the corporate fundraising executive for Dance Marathon.
As Mrs. Wooldridge said, we had this idea. It came up at our summer retreat for Dance Marathon, and we were just trying to plan some new fundraisers for Dance Marathon, which benefits Riley Children's Hospital, if you're unaware. This one came up. I had seen it at Lebanon High School. They've been doing this for 20 plus years. And then also Center Grove and Whiteland High Schools have been doing this periodically over the last couple of years. Our proposed locations for this would be the commuter lot, which is seen in D highlighted, and then in the athletic lot, which is the BC lot. Then another angle of that would be in the two yellow squares or rectangles are the commuter and athletic lots, and then the three red squares are our three Riley spots that we have at the high school, and we raffle those off or give them away as giveaways for special events throughout the year. And so we would like to paint those codes as well as this, as the designated parking lots for some promotions.
So here's some of the homework that we did to kind of be sure that this is something that students would really want to get behind and they'd really want to be a part of. So we sent out a survey to the whole high school, and out of that, we had 163 students say yes, and we only had 17 that said no, which is an impressive turnout. So here are some of the examples of what we would hope the students would do, and just things like that. Keep going down, if you would. Just different little things that kind of give our parking lots more of a character, more colorful, and it gives the students the way to kind of show who they are and really who they are as a person.
Now this one, when I was in a meeting with our high school administration this earlier a couple months ago, Mrs. Wooldridge had the idea for three of our administrators to have the Big Ten right up front. So that's just another example of what this could become if we are able to pursue this.
I did not approve the Ohio State.
The price breakdown per space that we have decided would be $40 total. $15 would go directly to Dance Marathon and our fundraising. $15 would also cover the school parking permit that students are already required to purchase. And then $10 goes to cover the spaces at the end of the year, which I'll go over that in a little while. But the parking permit, if a student has already purchased their permit for this year, the space will only cost $25 to paint.
So here are some of the requirements that we had came up with. We would use a water-based exterior latex paint. Along with that, we would have measurements so that it wouldn't extend to the white line in the parking spaces. Along with that, the designs would have to be approved, of course. The approval process would go through first the administration and then us as well, just to really be sure that everything that gets passed is things that we want to have out there and not anything that would be inappropriate. And then students would bring their approved design the day of the painting so that we could really be sure that we get what they want and have those unique designs right down.
And then bringing that design on the day of painting is just to ensure that we actually, if the design that the student plans to paint is the design that was approved. And then the water-based exterior latex paint is what Lebanon High School uses. And instead of just using regular paint, this water-based exterior latex paint will hold its condition so that with rain, water, and other elements, it won't wash the paint away. So it'll keep its pristine condition. How to choose spaces was a little complicated, but we've come to what we think is the best option. We'll have a diagram of both of the available lots. Seniors will have first priority because we're seniors, but so we're thinking that seniors will have 2 days to choose the spots before we open it up to juniors. And then if a senior didn't have the chance to choose within the first 2 days, they could still continue with the juniors. This would just be at lunches and people would come and choose their space. We will have the diagram numbered so they know which space they choose. And then the day of painting, we'll have the spaces numbered in chalk so that you know which space to go to. The day of painting, Mrs. Hart and Mrs. Sargent, our Dance Marathon supervisors, have agreed to be the police of the area to ensure that everyone's in the appropriate spot that they signed up for. Our registration packets, we decided to color code these. We said, just for example, green will be if you need to buy your parking permit and parking space information, so that would be the $40 packet. And then if you've already purchased your parking space, that would be a yellow packet, and so it would only be $25. Our action plan for this would be to first receive board approval, then to paint the 3 designated Riley spaces to try to get people to start seeing what we're talking about when we're saying painting a parking lot. Then we would start the registration process, which would be about a 2-week period. Then we would hope to approve all designs the week of September 28th to October 2nd. And then the paint day dates are October 3rd from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m. and October 4th from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. upon approval. And then we plan to repaint the spaces black after graduation. And that $10 that was set aside in the $40 cost covers the cost to buy water-based exterior latex paint at the end. That way we can paint them all over and have it be returned to the black top each year. We talked about resurfacing the parking lot, but that's an expense that doesn't really need to happen each year. So if we are able to continue this project, just painting them over black allows for the spaces to be repainted each year. And then this is a big undertaking because if, say, we do have the 136 students that said they were interested, paint this, that's 136 spaces that we would have to repaint at the end of the year. But we said that service hours are available, so we believe that Dance Marathon, National Honor Society, Key Club, and Student Council would all be willing to partner with us and get those spaces repainted. And then we decided the week after graduation rather than the week before school ended because it just lets the seniors roll out with your parking space for the rest of the year and to show when people come to graduation what Franklin's all about.
And then here we have a sample of what a parking lot that would be completely filled would look like. And as we can see, it just gives a lot of colorful, different designs and things like that. And it gives personality to what is really a uniform part of schools and businesses, a parking lot.
And you can see that this is a very beautiful campus. This is at Lebanon High School, and I believe that this parking lot doesn't defame the image of Lebanon, and I believe that it would do the same at Franklin.
So why? What are some of the benefits of this? Well, first and foremost, it promotes school pride and spirit. That's something that in the past we've been kind of worried about, and we've seen a resurgence this year, and we think that it's small things like this that add up to make a big difference. It motivates positive behavior too. By allowing students to kind of give their personality and show their identity off with something like this, it allows them to feel more involved and feel more a part of the school as a community.
This positive behavior also, when you have a parking space that is your parking space, it'll make you want to take care of our facilities. And if you have to maintain your parking space and keep it looking nice, it'll help to build the culture in keeping at all of our facilities.
It makes students take ownership in the school. Along with that, it provides a philanthropic opportunity because to do this, they have to pay. They have to get involved, and by doing that, they're helping out Riley and they're helping out the school that they're a part of too.
If I can give you an example, we have 17 executive members on Dance Marathon, and just with the 17 students, if only 17 students did this, this would be an additional $255 for Dance Marathon. Now, if more students do that, that's an even bigger number, which that's great, but even if only 17 students did that, it would still be over $250.
And finally, it reestablishes a culture at FCHS, a culture of leadership, a culture of diversity, and a culture of learning who you are and being a part of a community.
That's all we have.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Several.
Who wants to ask first?
I think you guys sat down too soon. So this is time for a business lesson. So what are the unintended consequences of doing this?
Unintended consequences.
What are the unintended consequences of doing this?
Consequences how?
That's an open-ended question, Maggie.
Okay. Well, I mean, I believe we're avoiding any inappropriate content that will be on the spaces. It does do a little bit of wear and tear to the parking lot, but we've been informed that our parking lot is resurfaced every couple of years, so that should take away from damaging our facilities.
That covers everything I would think of.
So have you checked with Mr. Doty on that?
We spoke with Mr. Gaybar, yes.
Mr. Gabriel. So when you're painting on that day, how are you going to control the natural tendency of a youthful teenager to not get paint where it's not supposed to be?
If a student,
That would be the unintended consequence I would be worried about.
okay, so if a student was to paint outside of their 4-inch border or sling paint somewhere where it's not supposed to be, then the student will be responsible for covering and fixing that area of the parking lot. If that means that they need to buy additional black latex paint, then they could cover up the space or the area that they damaged. And then if they damage the white lines, then we would have to address that.
Holding students accountable for any action that they do, I think, is the primary way we're hoping to avoid any unintended consequences.
One other issue that was brought to our attention would be if a student were to park in a painted space that was not theirs. And Mr. Martin has assured to us that if a student parks in your space, he will tow the cars. No questions asked, just it will or result in a detention or some sort of that. But he said we are going to make this final and make people understand, like, when you buy a space, it is your space.
And when is it your space? At what, is it 24 hours a day, 365 days
Oh, that was
a year?
another one. These would just be during school hours. So anytime during an athletic event, these would be open to the public. And that was an issue because we were like using the athletic lot. We weren't sure if it was going to come across very well because we didn't know if visiting guests or even Franklin parents would understand what the painted spaces were. But we decided if there needs to be a sign added, we can purchase a sign with that extra $10 per space that we have. That just says that painted spaces are available past 3 p.m. each day.
Are you going to, the day of the painting, are you going to have their 4-inch borders marked off for them and the white lines possibly covered so there is no?
We probably should.
Oh, that would be a really good idea. So they know where they're supposed to be.
And with that, we will know like which spaces were actually purchased, so we can only do the ones that were purchased rather than all the spaces. But in our plan too, just for everyone's knowledge, is that we're going to open up like the first few rows of each lot first, rather than opening up the entire lot. So you can't like have 4 spaces in the front row and 8 in the back row and just random spaces. So as people decide and sign up, we'll have ask them to move towards the front rather than the back.
What about our security cameras? Do they cover these parking lots where these spaces are going to be? Because here's what my concern is. My concern is that somebody's going to deface somebody else's space, and then there's going to be retaliating defacing. And then the next thing you know, because this is hurtful, people are going to put a lot of time in this. They're going to put their emotions out there. They're going to paint this space. And I hate it that we have to talk about rules for the 2% minority, but those are the ones that cause the problem. So we have to address it. What about Lebanon? I mean, there's a lot of questions rolled up here. Did they have any kind of problems like that? Did somebody talk to them?
Yeah, we did. Laura Maddox, our other sister, she reached out to Lebanon High School, and it's become part of their culture. And so right now, they just don't have that issue. People respect it. It's really become a community event. They do their painting on a Saturday, and thousands from the community come out and watch the students paint it. Like I said, it's really become a community event for them, which is what we would hope would be part of our community as well.
I like the idea. Don't get me wrong. I like the idea, but
We ask them all these same questions
But,
every time.
But I would like for the students to know as well that, we have security cameras out there, and we're not going to put up with somebody defacing something that somebody worked very hard on and had emotional design. We're not going to put up with that.
The first year of this project may be a little rocky. We may run into some of those rules and issues of that sort. But I think if we are able to continue this project, or even start this project, but continue it over the years, I think as we develop that culture and establish that culture as FCHS, I think we'll lose some of those just as Lebanon has.
And I think, to be honest with you, starting my 9th year, I'm not concerned about our student body. I would be concerned about
That's true too.
competing schools
Yeah.
coming and defacing property.
Certain statues and rocks have been painted many times. So I just think we got to be aware of that. Of course, we've got cameras out there that are going to show all of this. And, but I do want it to just be painted on these couple days. I don't want that to be an excuse to paint the building or the cars.
Yeah, that's why we
if
set it
people
just
have a
2
pickup
days.
truck full of paint on a different day, they're looking for trouble.
We talked about an idea of having just like open time to paint your spaces, but we definitely decided that having a 2-day period of painting the spaces, making sure that that's the only time that it is acceptable to paint in a parking lot. So that's why we really went to the 2 days, and that gives people, instead of just 1 day, it gives people, if they have plans on another day, they're able to make it to the other, or if they're not able to finish in one day.
Bill, does that make sense? Just run over that with black paint rather than just asphalt, whatever the sealant? Can you just?
Right, every 3 years we resurface, crack fill and seal coat and then restripe, so that 3 years take care of it.
They're not going to be substantially slicker, are they? If when I'm 2 minutes late to school, I come squealing into that space and I hit that latex paint, I don't stop.
I think we'll just have to ask our students to be extra.
So here's where I'm at. I think it's a great creative idea. I applaud you for doing it. I'm concerned about your control. You haven't convinced me that you have enough controls in place on painting day. So what I would want to know is that you know exactly how it's going to be done. I want to know that you have communicated, here is the paint that you have to buy, that it's flat, I assume flat, that someone doesn't show up with gloss paint that they bought from Walmart that's not very good. I think you need to say, this is the paint you have to use. So those are details that if you haven't worked out, you haven't told me that you haven't worked out. So my approval is contingent upon you working out some significant logistic details that I don't think you have yet.
In our registration packets, we plan to have the exact requirements for paint. There's no glitter, no like the gloss, none of that. It has to be flat. And we are modeling that off of multiple other schools that we've seen do this. We found some of their registration packets online. And so we see exactly what they require so that we can make sure that we're not forgetting one of these elements. And so we didn't include that, but in our registration packet, which is being created right now, we have all of that.
Maggie, I have one question. Can you go back to the diagram of the parking lot where you outline the spaces right there? Why did you choose the athletic parking lot and not the one next to the commuter parking lot?
Okay, well, our original idea of what we were approved from our administration was the senior lot, which is the B lot up here, which is this one down here.
Yep.
And we decided that, personally, I park in athletic, and I know that a lot of student athletes do, and other students that aren't athletes park in athletic. And so we were afraid that we were going to lose a large percentage of participation if we excluded the athletic lot. And so then a compromise that I had with Mr. Martin was that if we were able to use the athletic lot, then we needed to switch to the commuter lot rather than the senior lot. And the commuter lot also serves as the teacher parking, if you don't know. About half or a quarter of it is. And so then we chose the commuter lot because it's near the senior lot, which allows it for students that previously parked in the senior lot that are interested in parking in that area. They can still park in the commuter area, and then athletic just to reach the athletes and other people that park over there.
So where do students now park?
Students now park in the athletic lot, the senior lot, and the commuter lot, which are B, C, B, and D.
Is this open to teachers to buy their own lot space?
Yes. And we discussed that, and we kind of decided that teachers would be about $20. They don't have to buy the parking permit, or even $25 if we wanted to do the same, like 15 and 10. But they wouldn't need to purchase the school parking permit, so it would just be the 20 or 25. But teachers are very on board with this. They're also very excited. They've been asking for our spaces to be numbered for quite a few years, just so they know which ones are the teacher spots. So I know quite a few of my teachers are very interested in painting their spaces or hiring students to paint them for them.
So one other question. You have the IU, Michigan, Ohio State. You don't have Purdue. My real question is, there's an issue of trademark and branding protection. And how are you addressing that?
Administration will approve those.
Well, I'm not concerned about you and I'm more concerned about IU coming and saying,
Right, yeah.
hey, you've
so
got
if
an
it's a
IU thing
trademark-
here that,
If it's a trademark question, then we'll say, no, you gotta come up with a different.
every one of those are gonna be trademarked.
Well, yeah, so we won't. want to
This was
take
just an
those. Those are
example.
just examples. They,
Of an idea. They wouldn't be able to actually use these trademarks. I just did this
Okay,
example
I'm
so
with
that
you
you
now.
would understand, that people would understand what I was insinuating.
On the day of the actual painting, Mrs. Hart and I will be there, and the
As well
students
as
will have to,
administration.
yes, will have to check in with us, show us their paint supplies, and assure us that they are the appropriate paint supplies, that they have their parking pass, that everything is in there, and they have the actual design that they had originally approved. So as far as those parameters, we will be there policing, I love that word, and hanging out and drinking probably a lot of time.
One other thing that we didn't mention is that we are only opening this up to juniors and seniors. We feel like upperclassmen are a little more mature and might take this a little more seriously than, we don't have all too many freshmen and sophomore drivers, but there are a few. But we decided that making this an upperclassman idea would hopefully keep it a little bit more mature and respected.
And typically students who get involved in school events and things like that haven't been misbehaving that much. And the reason they're involved is because they enjoy being a part of the school and a part of the community and the environment that we all share.
Have you considered going to one day only of doing the assignment?
Of just one day of painting?
Yes.
The reason we went to 2 days was the Saturday that we were hoping to paint is an SAT day. And so we originally planned to do it from like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So you have the entire day. If you can't get it done in that day, like, I'm sorry. But because it's an SAT date, we decided that we can't really start until about 2, depending on what location a student had to go to. And then we weren't sure that 2 to 8 would be a sufficient amount of time for someone to finish an entire space, or if someone had a sporting event or any other type of thing on that Saturday, might not be able to do it. So we decided to open it up to that Sunday. And then the next week is fall break, so there's a school.
The plan would be consecutive years, they would do it in the summer before school started. So Lebanon, it's a very special day. Kids have a set amount of time. They're not allowed to be in the parking lot before or after that time. And that would be our goal once this becomes.
And like Mrs. Wooldridge said, thousands of people come to Lebanon. They set it up like a tailgate. They tell you to bring your whole family, bring a cooler of food and drinks, and just get ready. They have like music playing, and it's just really a huge community event. And sadly, it's too late to do that now, really. But if we were able to do this year, then I feel like when we establish that culture, then if we want to open it up like a week or two before school starts and just make it a true community event.
That's what I see on the agenda. That's
Do we have a recommendation from the administration?
Well, Ms. Fuldridge and I had a discussion about this, and many of the questions that you all are asking, we talked about. And I think that I still have a couple questions about making sure that it actually goes off. I am concerned about the facing the building. There's not much we're going to do if we only have 2 teachers there and we get 100 people. So that's why I was trying to reduce it to. I like Lebanon's idea. You know what? You have 5 hours. You have 6 hours. Let's get this thing done. I don't know what Lebanon. How long does Lebanon take?
I think it was from 10 to 8.
10 to 8.
Yeah.
So.
And I mean, if it won't just be Hart and Sargent, of course, we'll invite like our whole administration team and even the board if they'd like to come and help out.
Yeah.
But then I'm sure we'll have plenty of parent volunteers that would love. I know my mom would help out, but all that.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there are plenty of teachers as well that will be there painting their own spots and would also help police.
I think it's a great idea. Lawrence North, we were there for a soccer match earlier this year. They do the same thing. I think it's, more schools are doing it. It is a great idea for all the things that they highlighted as far as team sport, camaraderie, fundraising. And I think it's a way to bring everybody in. I think the thing Lee and I talked about, it is a discussion item this time for the board. And in order for us to move the recommendation, we're gonna have to take it up into that. So we have a couple options. One, try to get the answers that you want answered before we make an action item. One thing we could do, we do have the web meeting coming up on the 25th, and that would still be within the time frame of the student schedule. If you have some questions that you want to see them answer.
No, I don't. I've expressed my criteria, and I'm entrusting Mrs. Sargent and Mrs. Hart with understanding those requests and putting that into place.
So our recommendation will be to go move forward with it. I want to make sure we have everything.
Was it an action item today?
No, it's a discussion
It's a
item.
discussion.
But we
I
can
can
move
move
it. We can move it.
I know Mr. Young, I think, had some questions and maybe
That was
some of
gonna
our.
be one of my questions is, are you asking for board approval this evening? Because from what I heard, you need board approval before the next regular board meeting for you to stay on your time.
If we're able to stay on our timeline, which it is able to be adjusted, we just don't want to get too far into the cold months.
Sure.
So we also thought like, okay, what about second semester? But then it's also like, is someone going to pay $40 to paint a space for a semester when it's just going to be repainted?
But if this were to be approved at the web meeting, that would still allow you to stay on your timeline, correct?
Yes. For the most part.
I would like, I understand this has been thoroughly vetted by a number of groups. I'd like to call the attorney for Lebanon just to have a real brief chat with him about this, if I could. So I wonder if the board would consider doing this, addressing this at their web meeting.
I'm fine if we have a quorum. I'm not going to be at that meeting. I'm going to be fishing in Oklahoma.
Can we move forward pending?
I think they can move forward.
Pending his review and communicate back to Dr. Clendenning.
Sure, you can. Let me ask you this. Does Webb exclude freshmen and sophomores from participating in or does Lebanon exclude freshmen and sophomores
Yes.
from participating?
Yeah.
And a lot of schools that they talked to, they just had seniors, and we wanted to open it up to juniors and seniors.
We talked about just doing seniors, but then we said we'll have a bigger impact and outcome if we have the juniors do this too. And then that also sets up, if juniors were able to do it this year, then they most likely want to do it again next year, or even more juniors this year would like to do it next year.
Mr. Thompson, to answer your question, I believe the board can approve this evening with the understanding that the authority to go ahead with it will be given by the superintendent within a reasonable amount of time.
Of course, the other question I really have is, do we need to approve this? Or is this an administrative?
I think you do, because it's kind of a material alteration to the buildings and grounds.
But it's temporary. It's not a fixed asset.
It's a temporary material alteration.
It's not a fixed asset.
Well, painting's always temporary in the sense that something can be repainted, but
It's not like we approve every time we go and paint the walls here.
Well, our board policy with regard to fundraising for student purposes, building level, principal, and superintendent. That's what our board policy says with regard to fundraising. And this is such a new experience and opportunity. That's why it's brought forth today as a discussion item. Because I was along the same lines of Roger. I think they are doing alterations to the physical plan. I want to make sure we're all on board before we move forward. But our board policy says that's the structure that we follow.
And I think, Mr. Thompson, what we can do is accommodate both schools of thought here. The board could approve the material alteration subject to the superintendent's approval of the fundraiser.
Yeah, I like that. And I do appreciate this coming before the board, even if it isn't necessarily something that would require or need our vote, just even as an information item and input. I think there's great value there.
I think you guys have a great idea. I applaud the initiative. You've heard my challenges in front of you. We haven't heard from Mr. Wertz.
I just want to know if I can get a space. That's really what I
Board
want to know.
members, you'd have a long commute.
One really quick story, I was in Lebanon the day they were painting at a literacy retreat or a literacy session. And I was talking to an English teacher from Lebanon, and her daughter was a senior, and they had spent the whole morning painting her daughter's space. So this is very much a family affair, that parents can be there and help to actually guide that as well. So we would encourage that.
Well, just keep in mind the day you're painting is the fall festival in Franklin. Just, that's probably good to have 2 days because there probably are some kids who are involved in other things. So that was a good thought.
And I think our principals in the back had some comments too.
I was just wondering if there was a compromise on the time, if that was gonna be an issue, that even though kids taking the SAT, you could extend it into the morning hours to do a one-day paint, but being that it is the fall festival, it might be different.
That's fine.
Two different occasions, and I also want to know what purchases paint.
Well, I think I would like to see the PTOs, and I met with PTO presidents the other day, talking about fundraising. I know unions, chili supper's coming up. I think all of you could put these in as auction items and help both events. I think, and really get the community, if you want this to be included as a community event, I think that'd be a great thing. I know Mrs. Martin can help you on the union, and I know that Webb and I know each of them. So I think there's some opportunity there for all of us to really enjoy the fun of this. And I think it's a great idea. Just I want to make sure that the first experience doesn't mean it's the last experience because someone decides to do something crazy.
All right, so given that,
As our carnival, and if it becomes a yearly thing, then we can also play with it as a auction item in our
Great, thank you.
So I'll make a motion pending, subject to legal counsel review, communicating back to Dr. Clendenning for final approval of a fundraiser that's within his realm of responsibility. Did you get all that, Natalie? Close enough?
Any further discussion among the board about the motion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by sign of aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Cheat on you.
all right, board and administrative comments.
Just a reminder that Monday, the 28th, Tuesday, the 29th of September, the annual fall conference for ISBA and IAPSS. This year, it's also a special conference in that we are going to present on the Tuesday slot at 9:30 our systemic improvement. Mr. Mercer, Mr. Thompson, and then Mr. Lamb from Cummins will be there, as well as Matt and Bill and myself. And we're going to talk about our journey. And then in October, we'll give a brief presentation of our presentation so everybody can see what we're doing with that. It's still not too late to register. I know Mrs. Ott is attending. Obviously, Mr. Mashmeyer, Mr. Thompson will be there, and I think Mr. Vaught as well. But if anyone else wants to go, please even come for that one session. It's at 9:30 on Tuesday. We'd love to have you. The web opportunity for educational experiences, individual student growth will take place on September the 25th. We'll begin breakfast around 7 to 7:30, and then there'll be a presentation as per our usual work session, and then tour the building, and then we'll be finished before 9 o'clock. And then school improvement plans, Mrs. Nally, any great news?
No, normally we would bring those to you in September. As you know, with the delay of ISTEP and all that, we don't have any data to really build a school improvement plan. And I think this will be a good thing, but the state has come out with a uniform school improvement plan that every school will have to use from this point forward. So I think it will be a good thing. Steve A. House and I are going in a couple weeks to be trained on that plan, and we'll bring it back and share with the rest of the principals. So as soon as we know more, we will get that to you.
Central 9 will be hosting the first ever fall break STEM camp. They're going to focus on 8th and 9th graders. In addition, on October 1st, there is a 5 to 8 introduction to STEM careers at Inverse Hauser, as well as many other programs in the area. Mrs. Anderson is our lead person at the middle school, serves as liaison for that experience, so we're looking forward to that. This is the year 2 for it. And just a reminder, fall break is October 12th through the 16th. That is the second Monday of the month, and therefore we move by vote previous in January, we've moved the board meeting to the 19th of October.
One additional comment to the board on our bond refinance. I spent over an hour last week with Standard & Poor's on a rating call. Last Wednesday, they were going to try their very best to have a rating available today. I have not heard yet if that happened. If it did happen, then the bond sale would likely occur Wednesday of this week, which was one day ahead of the Federal Reserve issuing what we hope is not an interest increase on Thursday. If they were not able to get that done, then it'll bleed into next week, and we'll doubly keep our fingers crossed that they don't increase interest rates on Thursday. But one way or another, it should occur in the next week.
All right. Are there any board comments? Any other administration comments? Any public comments on anything? All right, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
All right, adjourn.